This is a case that's got all the ingredients of one of the most horrendous true crime cases that I've ever come across. Also, if you see my trailer, you'll know that I'm more intrigued with cold cases, as I've said in the trailer, where people have sat back for so many years thinking they've got away with it. This is one of them cases. As a sequence of events unfolds, with a dramatic web of lies in this case, it will bring to light the chilling reality of the truth. This case includes jealousy, stalking, threats, a love triangle, and someone that actually believes they're above the law. This case was all but forgotten for almost 23 years, until new investigators refused to be silenced. This is the case of Sherri Rasmussen. Let's get into it. This case begins in 1978 when John Ruetten, 19 at the time, a mechanical engineering student from San Diego, who was also a handsome, tanned, charismatic athlete who played basketball for his squad, the UCLA. It was here he met Stephanie Lazarus, 18 at the time. She was from Simi Valley, California. She's also very sporty. She played for the junior basketball team, also at UCLA. Because they were both athletes, they stayed at the Dykstra Hall dorms near the university, and they both soon became an item. As it was the late 70s, it was a time when the social scene was an all-time high. We had Led Zeppelin, Marvin Gaye, Blondie on the music scene, Cindy Crawford on the catwalk. The social scene of the 70s set a tone that is still with us today. The social scene was like it had never been before. Who would be thinking about murder when all this was going on? And so John and Stephanie, they were part of this scene, the late 70s. They began dating, although it never really moved on for more than anything other than casual really for John. As their social scene progressed, so did the partying. But while John only saw Stephanie more as part of the group, Stephanie had her sights set on John as something more. Not picking up on this, John would also date other people. While Stephanie was being a little controlling in trying to pin John down, there's little things that she would do. She'd also take photographs of him in bed in the mornings naked, when he was fast asleep and didn't know anything about it. And she'd make a joke of this, so it was just funny. She'd show him these photographs laughing. She'd also steal his clothes and run off with them. She was constantly thinking of things she could do to pin him down, to keep him there. She always arranged things for them to do, something to keep him in her company all the time. But John did have his doubts with regard to Stephanie being a permanent fixture. I think she was there, I don't think that he ever thought of her as being anything permanent in his life. They both graduated in 1982, leaving university and going on to start their careers. John went on to become an electrical engineer, and Stephanie, surprising everyone, she joined the police force, becoming an officer in 1983. Over the next few years, John and Steph would still bump into each other at parties and go on group holidays with friends. However, in June 1984, John met 25-year-old Sherri Rasmussen. She was 27 at the time, a graduate of Loma University, and she went on to become a director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Centre. She would soon move on to training other nurses and doing lectures in nursing. Sherri knew her career path from a very young age and was studying in college at just 16 years old. It's said that John fell in love with Sherri almost immediately. They had so much in common with each other and there was a lot of chemistry between them. On John's 25th birthday, Stephanie threw John a party, unaware of his relationship with Sherri. At finding out about his relationship with Sherri, Stephanie was devastated. As time moved on, John and Stephanie's relationship began to fade out slightly. Although they still remained friends, she also kept in close contact with John's family. On finding out this news, Stephanie wrote to John's parents, declaring how much she loved John and how the past year had tore her apart. She said she was sorry it ended as it did, but she probably wouldn't be seeing them again, advising him further that she didn't really understand his decision. After this, Stephanie contacted John and asked if she could go round to see him. She said that she needed closure. John agreed reluctantly. This was obviously a ploy for Steph. She just wanted to get him in the sack again, which is what she did. John fell for it. That was mistake number one, John. Because after this, Stephanie then went round to Sherry's place of work, all dressed up, went in and advised her, Sherrie, what they'd been up to, what had happened, and that things weren't over between them two. Things were still going on between them. Like she was doing Sherrie a favour. She was so determined while she was round there that they eventually had to get a security guy to ask her to leave. On leaving, she told Sherrie that if she couldn't have him, nobody could. Something else that was happening around this time as well. Sherrie had this feeling that she was being followed. She felt somebody was stalking her. She went and told her parents, and she told him that she thought it was somebody dressed as a man. So obviously it was a woman dressed as a man. But she added that they had these wild looking eyes. Sherrie also confronted John about this and about this visit, and he didn't deny it, but he told her that it was definitely over. He had made this mistake. It wouldn't happen again. However, Stephanie also kept turning up at their condo just for little favours off John. Sherrie made it clear to John she didn't like this and he needed to tell her. He said he would, but he just didn't. His point was that they were just friends and she didn't mean nothing by it and it'll fade off, it'll stop. It didn't stop though. On another occasion, Stephanie just turned up at their condo with the skis and said that they needed waxing and would John do it. A few days after this visit as well, dropping the skis off, she returned back to the condo. When John wasn't there, it was just Sherrie there. And this time she was dressed in a full uniform, a police uniform. So she was quite intimidating. She had a gun on her. She was just making Sherrie feel really uncomfortable and trying to intimidate her even more. Nevertheless, through all these problems, on November the 23rd, 1985, John Ruetten and Sherri Rasmussen got married. On the morning of February the 24th, 1986, after being married for just 3 months and both being really, really happy, John got up for work, as he normally would, and spoke with Sherrie, who said that she had a training day at work and she was thinking of giving it a miss. She told John, and he said, just go in and get it over and done with. And John left for work at 7:20. So during the day, John called Sherrie at home, which he'd normally call her during the day, whether she was at work, at home, just for a catch-up. Called her at home a couple of times and there was no answer. So he then called her at work and one of her colleagues had said, well, I've not seen her yet today. I don't know if she's in or not. But that wasn't unusual. Sometimes she wouldn't see her until later on in the day also. So she weren't quite sure whether she was in work or not. Also, Sherrie's sister had tried to call her during the day and couldn't get any response anywhere, at home or at work. A neighbour had noticed that Sherrie and John's garage door was open around 9:45 in the morning, but Sherrie's BMW, which was an engagement gift from John, wasn't in the garage. Around noon, a maid who was cleaning a property close by said that she thought she heard something like fighting or something, but she just thought it was a couple having an argument and she wasn't getting involved. John continued to call later on that day, still with no success, and on his arrival home, he noticed that Sherrie's car wasn't on the drive. Also, he noticed on the drive was glass. He immediately felt there was something wrong and he carefully went into the condo. As he reached the living room, he saw Sherrie, his wife, on the living room floor, and she was cold to touch. He knew instantly that she was dead. He could see she'd been hit in the head and the face. He could see that there was cords around that suggested at one stage she'd been tied up. Heartbroken, John phoned the police. John also noticed that there was bloody fingerprints near the burglar alarm, which was like a panic button. The police arrived at the scene to take evidence. Although they weren't the only visitors there that day. One of their own colleagues had been there earlier. The green-eyed monster, Stephanie Lazarus, had picked the lock, entered the condo and took a shot at Sherrie. This missed and it hit the window, smashing the glass to the outside. It's thought at one stage that Sherrie got the better of Stephanie, getting her into a headlock. However, Stephanie bit Sherrie on the inside of her forearm. Stephanie smashed a vase over Sherrie's head and hit her with a gun. all around her head. She then covered the gun with a duvet and she shot 3 more times into Stephanie's face, heart and lungs. Stephanie then set the scene in the condo to make it look like it had been a robbery gone wrong. 2 men described as 2 Latinos, which had been on the news for recent crimes in the area and had been holding women at gunpoint in their homes. They were being used. Stephanie was going to try and use these 2 men as the scapegoat as to what had happened in Sherrie and John's home. Stephanie had ransacked the property, stacking up the VCR and CD player near the door to make it look like they'd been interrupted and left in a hurry. Stephanie went off in Sherrie's car. The car was found a week later with the keys still in the ignition. The scene showed that this struggle had gone on for a long time, possibly hours. The police got underway to collect as much evidence as they could, taking photographs, collecting DNA, just collecting as much information as they could. John also went around the property to see if he could see anything that was stolen. The only thing, after delving into everything, because there was jewellery around and on the dressing table and they couldn't find anything, the only thing that he could find missing was his marriage certificate. The lead detective, Lyle Mayer, after speaking with John and ruling him out, he decided that this was a botched robbery. Sherrie's parents, absolutely devastated, they spoke with the detective and they told him that somebody had been stalking Sherrie. She wasn't sure who, but it was somebody with these wild looking eyes. But they told this detective that Sherrie had thought it was a woman dressed as a man. But the police wasn't having this at all. They went and spoke to John, asked if he knew anything about this. Their parents also mentioned about Stephanie, that perhaps they could do with just looking into her. Again, the detectives went back to John and asked John about Stephanie and did he think it could have anything to do with her. Mistake number 2, John said no. I mean, really, that should have been the other way around. That should have been John saying to the detective, I don't think so, but I need you to look into this. Obviously, she worked for LAPD. I mean, they were quick to scrub her off the list. It's also worth noting at this time as well, John didn't tell Sherrie's parents the same evening that this happened. He told them the next day. Also, just to add, Sherrie's parents weren't that fond of John. They felt that Sherrie could do better. Obviously, she could have done. When it came to Nell and Loretta, which is Sherrie's parents, when it came to them giving the full statement, again, they mentioned Stephanie Lazarus again and said, we really want you to look into this. There's something just not right with this girl. This marriage certificate had gone missing. Who nicks a marriage certificate? But the police just was not having it. They was insistent it was a botched robbery. The more insistent that Sherrie's parents became, this detective then told them that they was watching too much TV, that they'd already worked it out and Sherrie had interrupted burglars. Something else as well, one of the other detectives that was on this case, he looked at this bite mark on Sherrie's arm and he said, that's not the kind of thing that a man would do. Men don't normally bite in a struggle. That's like a female attack. That's not something a man would do. Again, he also got told, forget it. You see, the crime rate at this time was really high in LA, and it was a case of just getting through, ticking them off, solved. That's all they wanted. And he was told to forget it. Time moved on and Sherrie's parents just kept calling for updates on the case. They were advised that Stephanie Lazarus was already ruled out as a suspect. Sherrie's parents were persistent. They just carried on ringing, asking for updates continually. But what happened then was pretty bad. The police stopped responding to their requests for updates. They were leaving him on hold. They were not calling him back. They were just disregarding the calls, passing him around. This went on for 5 years until they eventually gave up. During the following years, Stephanie was rising through the ranks of the LAPD to detective. She married a police officer called Scott Young and adopted an infant daughter. At one stage, Stephanie owned her own detective company called Unique Investigations before returning to LAPD. 18 more years passed. We're now at 2004 and the lead detective, Mayor, had retired. Also by this time, John Ruetten had left LA. He remarried a few years later. While Stephanie Lazarus had moved back to the LAPD division, she was now in the art and theft forgery, which most detectives said was a cushy number. So we're in 2004, as I said, and in rolls Jennifer Butterworth, now Jennifer Francis, an LAPD criminalist. Jennifer was working in the new unit for cold cases. She was going through them all as a DNA analyst. She went through the old DNA on Sherri's case. Incidentally, much of the evidence had gone missing over the years. I wonder why. And the saliva DNA, which had been collected with all the other DNA and evidence, that wasn't actually with the rest of the evidence. That was found in an envelope. The envelope had been tampered with and it was right at the back of the fridge, although the seal on the tube was still sealed. Jennifer Butterworth had this tested and it was found to be the DNA of a female. With this information, she wrote a report and she put a note on it that she suggested that they delve further into this, as there was 5 female suspects, one of them being Stephanie Lazarus, and the other 4 had been eliminated. Digging deeper into this case, Jennifer also found a report from Sherri's parents to say that Sherri had been stalked by somebody who she thought was a female but dressed as a man. Things were starting to add up for Jennifer. Jennifer, excited, thinking she was onto something, she went to her superior and she said, listen, I found new evidence here. That DNA is from a female. Only 4 females, there was 5 suspects at the time, female suspects. Only 4 of them had been eliminated. And it could be that it's a love triangle. She was quickly told to forget it, that Stephanie Lazarus had been cleared and that the DNA, which was a female's, that they'd worked out it was not 2 men, but it was a man and a woman that had done the burglary. How they come to that decision, I don't know. So Jennifer's theory was just thrown out the window. Not long after this, Jennifer was transferred to another division. Yeah, stop doing your job, Jennifer. So Jennifer Butterworth had been thrown into another division. You stay over there. And 5 years pass. Again, the case hasn't been touched. So then we get to 2009. The crime in LA at that time had dropped massively. So what they did was they threw that money into cold cases. And they told them to get stuck into all these cold cases and get as many solved as possible. Sherri's parents had all but given up. And then in walks 2 new detectives, John Ruetten and Peter Barber. After analysing the case and reading Jennifer Francis's report, Jennifer Butterworth, the DNA analyst from 5 years earlier, they agreed that it was probably a woman who murdered Sherri and staged it as a burglary. Other evidence that didn't make sense to them was the stacked music systems, which was at the top of the stairs, which surely, if there'd been all these struggles, that would have got knocked over in all the struggle. The thumb mark of the blood that was near the panic button, that was tested and it was seen to be that of Sherri's. Now, that only got there after Sherri had been murdered, so that didn't make sense. Another note that was in the file was taken from John Ruetten. On this note, it confirmed that Stephanie Lazarus, who was John's former girlfriend, was also a police officer for LAPD. These 2 detectives, John Ruetten and Peter Barber, looked up Stephanie Lazarus on the staff register within LAPD. They also knew from the notes where somebody had wrote somewhere in the notes that Nell, Sherri's father, was actually suspicious of Stephanie because of her going to her works. Things were just not adding up right for these 2 detectives. They went further into investigation and they found that on the day of that murder, that Stephanie Lazarus was off work. They also knew that the gun used in the crime was a .38 caliber. That is the same model of gun that was used during that year with LAPD. Further investigations also shown that Stephanie reported her gun missing 13 days before the murder. This was premeditated, don't forget. She didn't report it missing with her own office, LAPD. She reported it missing via Santa Monica. Now, don't forget, Stephanie was also a detective at this time. She was working for the arts and fraud side of detectives. These two detectives, they worked just up the corridor, just like opposite her. They decided that they needed her DNA. Now, they didn't want to just tear into that. They wanted to solidify this case first. So they needed her DNA on record. They couldn't exactly walk in her office and pick up a cup. So they got a detective onto her, watching her. During this period, she actually nips out in her break, dinner time, and she goes to Costco for a coffee or a soda, has a drink, and then discards it into the rubbish. The police, detectives, collect this, put it straight into a plastic bag, and take this back. The lab confirmed that the DNA swab taken from the cup was a match for the saliva from the bite on Sherri's arm. And sure enough, it was a match. They got her. I love these cold cases. They had their proof. It was now time to interview Stephanie Lazarus. In order to make sure that when they interviewed her that she was disarmed, they concocted a story that they needed her help to interview a witness to do with an art theft. They was going to do this interview at the lockup, and this place was chosen because on entry to the lockup, all police officers had to disarm themselves and hand in their guns. So we're going to see some of this interrogation now. Just stick with it, because at the start she's sat forward in this interrogation, so you don't actually see her face when they mention John Ruetten's name, the pause in it and things like that. So we kind of miss that, but within a minute or so she sits back. So watch this.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
No interrupt. Well, have a seat. What this is, I didn't want to bring this up in your squadron. I didn't want to talk about this in the squadron because I don't know who people are listening.
That's true.
And if we go to my side, everybody's always wondering what everybody else is
sure,
doing.
no problem.
Okay. But like we're talking about being busy and stuff, we've been assigned a case that we've been looking at.
Okay.
It's a new case, and as reviewing the case, there's some notes to see as far as your name being mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Do you know John Ruetten?
John Ruetten?
Ruetten.
Oh, yeah, I went to school with him.
You did?
Yeah, close.
Yeah.
I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's regarding, it's a case we're working on. It involves John, and in there, some of the statements we reviewed, you know, there's notes and stuff that he knew you and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we were good friends.
Was there ever any relationship or anything that developed between you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we dated, you know, I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's relating to his wife.
Okay.
Okay. Did you know her?
Not really. I mean, I knew that he got married years ago.
Did you ever meet her?
God, I don't know.
Do you know who she was or anything?
Well, let me think. God, it's been a long time ago. I may have met her. Geez.
Well, let me ask you, roughly how long would you say you guys dated?
Oh, geez. I couldn't even say. I mean, I started school there in 78.
Mm-hmm.
I started UCLA in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated in 82. I don't even remember what year he graduated, if it was a year or two before me. You know, his sister had spent the night at my house before. Obviously, I spent the night at his house before. He probably spent the night at my house before. You know, I mean, what's this all about? I mean,
Well, let me ask you, what is the relationship between you and John?
you know, it was kind of a weird relationship. I mean, we dated. I can't say that he was my boyfriend. I don't know that he would consider me his girlfriend. We dated, we did things. I played sports in college. He played basketball. His brother played basketball. We just, it just didn't work out.
Had you ever met his wife?
I may have.
Do you remember her name or anything, or? Or what she did for a living, or where she worked, or anything about her? Had you ever met his wife?
I may have.
Do you remember her name or anything, or? Or what she did for a living, or where she worked, or anything about her?
Well, I think I'm going to say that I think she was a nurse. And I can't even remember how he said he met her. I mean, it's been so long ago. I don't understand why you're talking about some guy I dated a million years ago.
Well, do you know what happened to his wife?
Yeah, I know she got killed.
What did you hear about that?
I saw a poster at work. I'm sure I spoke to him about it. I think I spoke to another friend of his about it.
And how did you first learn about that?
Jeez. Someone could have called me. I could have heard it at work. I think at one point there may have been a flyer or something. I don't remember how I heard. I mean, I don't even remember what year it was.
And you said you thought his wife was a nurse. Do you have any idea where she was working at the time, or did he ever mention that to you? Was it a hospital or a doctor's office?
I'm sure he must have mentioned it. Now that you're bringing that up, I don't know, it's, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that just sounds crazy to me.
Yeah, so you, offhand, you don't recall ever going into her house and having words and physically,
No.
attacking her attacking you?
No.
Nothing like that?
No, I mean, no.
As they processed everything, they did the best they could at that time, and they looked at a lot of people and different things in this case. And you're right.
I mean, if you guys are claiming that I'm a suspect, then, I got a problem with, with that. Okay? So, if you're doing this as an interrogation, you're saying, hey, I'm a suspect. Well, now I got a problem with, now you're accusing me of this? Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to figure out what happened, Stephanie.
Well, I'm just saying, do I need to get a lawyer if you're accusing me of this?
Everything else on the case, because nobody was ever arrested on the case.
I don't know that or not.
Okay. Now, what we'd like to do is, obviously you know about all the DNA stuff and things of the nature that, gets done on cases nowadays. If we asked you for a DNA swab, would you be willing to give us one?
Maybe.
And your name's in the book. These people are pointing at you for whatever reason.
I don't know why. That's just crazy. I mean, that's absolutely crazy.
And it would be irresponsible on our part not to look at it.
I know. You guys have to do your job, and I guess I'm going to have to contact somebody. So.
That's fair.
I mean, because I know how this stuff works. I
Sure.
mean, I just can't believe it.
We understand that. I mean, if we were in your position, we would feel the same way.
I just can't even believe it. I mean, it's just, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked that somebody would be saying that I did this. I mean, we had a fight, and so I went and killed her. I mean, come on.
Well,
that's...
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks for giving me the courtesy. I wish I recorded it.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Stephanie, take care.
All right.
This is absolutely crazy.
Have a seat, Stephanie.
This is insane.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Stephanie, you have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes,
Anything you say may be used against you in court. Do you understand?
yes,
You have the right to the presence of an attorney before and during any questioning. Do you understand?
yes.
If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you free of charge before any questioning if you want. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us right now?
No.
All right.
Okay.
This is crazy. This is absolutely... I'm like in shock. I'm totally in shock.
This isn't the only interrogation, by the way. I am putting that in a separate video because it's too long. So I've just picked out bits here for you to listen to, but I'll get into that in a minute. But you can see how her tone changes here. Are you claiming, I'm not okay with that? Are you trying to pin this on me? I mean, this is obviously how she got by in life, more or less. How dare you? They've all covered for her. There was DNA tampered with. It was separated. The envelope which the test tube was in, okay, it was still sealed, but part of that envelope was split. I don't know if it looks like split where the name was, but it's so somebody's been in there. I mean, she's worked around all that, so, but it's like somebody's been in there and that has been separated from the rest. Now that was crucial evidence for this case. DNA. It had moved on so much as well, and it's funny how that had been separated from the rest. Whilst this was happening, there was also like teams which was outside her property, outside her office, all ready for the minute her arrest hit, so that they could go in, seize her laptop, seize things at home. They'd found a journal of hers at home, which was from the 80s. And this journal proves how daunted she was and how obsessed she was with John and upset about the engagement. I mean, this is massive, isn't it? Because considering in this interview, she wasn't even sure of her name. She wasn't even sure if she'd met her. From here, she was taken to the Linwood County Jail for Women whilst awaiting trial. Her bail was set at a massive $10 million cash. On the 9th of March, a jury of 8 women and 4 men found Stephanie Lazarus guilty of murder.
Good afternoon. I understand you have reached a verdict in this matter. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. All right, please provide the verdict to the bailiff. All right, the clerk will please read the verdict.
People of the State of California versus Stephanie Eileen Lazarus. Case number BA 357423. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the crime of murder of Sherri Rasmussen in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony, as charged in count 1 of the information. We further find the murder was of the first degree. We further find the allegation that in the commission of the above offense, the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, personally used a firearm, namely a handgun, within the meaning of Penal Code Section 1.
On the 11th of May 2012, Stephanie Lazarus was sentenced to 27 years prison for murder. She'll be eligible for parole in 2034. Also, during the time that this case was cold, Stephanie Lazarus invited John on a holiday with a couple of others. He actually rang the police and asked if she had been eliminated, which of course back then they said, oh yeah, and he went on holiday with her and he slept with her twice more. After her arrest, Stephanie Lazarus, she was allowed to retire early on an LAPD pension while she was held in jail. At the start of this trial in 2012, the prosecutors argued that Stephanie's motive was pure jealousy. They opened the case, a bite, a bullet, a gun barrel and a broken heart. John Ruetten became emotional in court, saying he made many mistakes going near Steph while he was engaged to Sherrie. The defence for Stephanie was that the evidence had been degraded and it was tainted by now. However, the bite mark and the saliva matching, it was just too much for the jurors to ignore. Also, after the trial, there was 2 other lawsuits brought against LAPD. One was from Jennifer Butterworth, who is now Jennifer Francis, for the fact that she got disregarded and she got moved to another division. The other one was from Sherrie's parents for why the case had taken so long, it had gone cold twice, and why the information that they give had been disregarded. However, both these cases was disregarded and they got nowhere with these cases. So this case kind of ends up where it started, really. You know, they were disregarded at the start and they was disregarded at the end. I couldn't imagine how Sherri's parents feel, or Jennifer, you know, in her prime of her profession, finding information like that and being disregarded. She was right. She was bang on. It could have been solved 5 years before. It should have been solved 23 years before. But, however, she was on the nose with that information and they didn't want to know. Yeah, so what do you think? Do you think John knew? Do you think he knew and he just thought she was a nutter and he was too frightened to say anything? Or he was naive? Or, you know, being greedy? What do you think? Do you think, because not long afterwards, as I said, he went away and got married. I know you've got to, you know, you can't hang around forever. I just don't understand why he didn't say what had happened to Sherri and what Stephanie was like. And why did he lie in bed at night and question, why would they take a marriage certificate? I mean, come on. Do you also think there was a cover-up with LAPD? Or do you think that they really did think, we've just got to move this case on? It's a botched robbery, that's it, it's solved. Thanks for popping back in and watching this video. If you've not been here before and you've not subscribed, it's not too late. But thanks to the people that have already subscribed. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah, don't forget that I have done another video following on from this, which is the full interrogation. As I say in that video, watching that interrogation, I watched it all the way through and then I listened to it as well. I think sometimes things stand out when you don't watch somebody's mannerisms and you just listen and you can see how she diverts away from the questions that she's being asked. It's really interesting. It's worth a watch. Bye for now.